Welcome back to another session in the AAEEBL Symposium, this time with Megan Mize and Elle Tyson, who are going to talk about inviting curiosity about AI, writing and design through ePortfolios. So get ready for this 55-minute workshop with them. Over to you two.
Well, hello, everyone. I know what everyone wants to do at the end of a conference is a workshop where you do things, but that's what we're going to do. And I'm so excited you're joining us here today, and I'm so excited that we get to speak to you again and just moving some things around my screen. There we go. Um, I've so thoroughly enjoyed our conversations from the in-person ABLE conference and today's wonderfully won symposium. And I've seen a lot of through lines and shared discourses. And so I hope that you all will enjoy maybe the slight pivot off of some of what we've been talking about, this strong emphasis on reflection and all of that. It hasn't gone away, but I would like to talk a little bit about design and what happens to visual design when AI comes to play. And I do think portfolio scholarship sometimes underattends visual design, maybe because many of us are not, in fact, graphic designers by trade. And it is a tough field that AI will try to fool you into thinking it can do very well for you. And as you can see, we do have the bit.ly and the longer URL in the chat, and we are always happy to share our slides. Whoops. And if you have not encountered me before, I am Megan Mize. I am the Director for ePortfolios and Digital Initiatives at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And in this role, I have built and overseen the development of our university-wide ePortfolio program. And on the day-to-day basis, while I oversee our entire team, I work very closely with faculty and administrators on integrating ePortfolio and other digital high-impact practice efforts into courses, programs, initiatives, grants, etc. And many of you who have seen me know the old joke at this point that I'm dyeing my hair purple so you cannot see it go white, as we are in the middle of a massive gen ed reform where we are starting with an entirely new gen ed through which ePortfolios will be woven. And then I'll hand it over to you, Elle.
Yeah, hello everyone. And I'm sure it won't surprise you all that this is our whole team. It's the two of us plus some student employees who are wonderful, but this is our team. And I'm the assistant director for ePortfolio and digital initiatives. I get to work really closely with Megan every day. But I focus in my day-to-day on the student support side of things. I have a background in writing centers and tutoring. And we're always just trying to make sure that our student support is matching what our faculty are doing. So yeah.
Yeah, someone asked me in the chat. I know off the top of my head, 23,000 undergrads is what they estimate for us right now. It always fluctuates. I don't remember how many grad students, but we're fairly sizable. So yes, when it gets woven into the gen ed, it will certainly impact this team. So when we talk about portfolio design, and it's interesting to me because I do work so closely within FacDev almost every day, faculty development. One of the kind of underspoken or underattended to things is faculty anxiety around design principles. A lot of times they might focus on the visual or aesthetic nature of portfolios before ever really engaging with what their intention or their outcomes for portfolios are. In fact, I'm sure some of you have worked with faculty where they may be penalizing students for not pretty portfolios, but I have to ask them, was design a part of your course? Is that the learning outcome we're really measuring here? Not to say it doesn't matter, because again, as a rhetorician, how you deliver content certainly informs how it's received. And so again, it's always kind of fun to talk to the choir, but I wanted to break it down into different elements that we think are design aspects of portfolio work. So for instance, training folks on layout and structure. How is this content best organized and sequenced? I was really delighted last week when someone talked about eye tracking. So like F patterns, top, side, middle, or Z patterns, top, middle, bottom, and where content should land and where the eye tends to go based on cultural reading practices. Thinking too about color and tone. We talk a lot about accessibility with color, which is a good way to get students into thinking about accessibility, but we talk a bit less about tone and how that impacts the reception from the reader. Um, what are we really conveying to someone? I think of one that came from one of our cybersecurity students recently, where it was black in an incredibly aggressive red. And I said, this feels very threatening. And he said, good, that's what I want. And I was like, okay, then at least he knew what he was going for, right? But he understand there was a tonality to that. And then navigation is certainly when we talk about when we do templates and structure, but also how are we moving this reader through the website through design and not simply just the menu or the way that content is prioritized in terms of like information hierarchy. And then finally, multimodality. We talk a lot in portfolio scholarship about artifacts and evidence of learning, but maybe a little bit less about their placement in relationship to alphabetic text or on the page or white space or symmetry. So all of those aspects that mean that the evidence and the media are amplifying content rather than disrupting it or crowding it, and so forth. And so all of that to say is something that, again, I know I'm not persuading you on, you know this, but I am teasing it out for us, is that design is a meaningful composing practice. And it's one of the things that makes portfolios so compelling. And to use the earlier comment from our keynote today, resilient, right? It's where we start to also see that uniqueness in the student beyond alphabetic narrative. We get to see the human making identity choice through visual design. And every choice communicates something, right? So what happens when we're not the ones choosing? And I know you've seen portfolios today. You've seen one from us. You're going to see two more. Maybe we'll do these quicker than I usually do because I love to linger on students. But we're going to look really quickly at two students, one at a time. And I will put these guided prompts back up on the screen and ask Elle if you'll copy these questions into the chat. Thank you, Elle. But when you look at these two portfolios, and I know all of us look at hundreds of them, but I want you to think with visual lens in place. What design choices stand out to you quickly? How does the layout guide where your eyes go first? It doesn't mean it does it well. Maybe they make errors, but where are your eyes going on the page? What tone is being conveyed through color, image, and spacing? And what feels professional or personal or confusing or accessible, right? So thank you, Elle, for copying those in. And we're going to start with Shane. And I think, Elle, are you able to pull that for me? So Shane, do not go to Shania. They have similar names and that was not intentional. Just go to Shane, our first portfolio. And I will hover on this page for a minute. And I mean, again, it's a quick glance. And we somewhere I have research that says it takes something like 0.005 milliseconds for us to form an opinion. And that means you're taking in visual content first before you ever read. So when you look at this first site, when you look at Shane, think about these questions. And now I'll stop talking. Rebecca, you were the first to make a foray into commentary. Are you willing to share a little bit more about what you said in the chat also for our recording?
Sure. I guess I was struck by, right, it's very simple, but professional, like very clean lines. Right. It seems very engineer appropriate, but perhaps a little bit plain, kind of lacking some personality.
Absolutely. So we have, I would say, a lot of open space here that perhaps could be addressed in different ways. I'll say a little bit more, but I want to make sure you guys speak. Christina, you hit on his color palette. What did you think about his color palette?
Yeah, similar to what Rebecca had already said, the colors to me suggest calmness and just a very organized person and just, yeah, exuding calm. So definitely not the red and black. that you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I don't know that I want my civil engineer to evoke panic or distress, but maybe I do want my cybersecurity professional to be a bit aggressive when someone's trying to hack me. So I think Shane does attempt to convey, and should you meet him, which I hope you will notice, he has his name. His image is like your eye goes straight towards it because he's using that circle, which draws the eye in. He is using a very clean color palette, somewhat soothing. I think Candace mentioned his resumes right up front. He's already telling you with layout and design what he's trying to achieve here. This is not a learning portfolio. He's using it when he applies for jobs. And he does do something which is interesting. A lot of women have not loved this page because he centers his family, which again, anything on the left side is usually something we value because it's one of the first things Western readers are going to note. And so we get to see, his beautiful family. They are lovely, and you can kind of get a sense of fun and play. And he's using symmetry and balance. I would agree with you that it is a bit plain for my personal taste, but I'm a humanist and I'm also a maximalist in my life. But it's easy to move through, correct? You know what he wants you to look at. Um, do you think when I show this to engineers, they think that Shane is an interesting practitioner to consider? They do, because Shane shows them.
I would
These are-
I would
yeah,
think so, especially this one. I mean, this has numbers and it has the professional images, it has all the details on it, that somebody might really like to dive in directly.
absolutely. I think, Gail, you said it exactly. I think you all probably are able to get a quick snapshot of who this person is, what they can do, and the design has amplified it. He might be a little boring, guys. Like, I hate to tell you, he's just kind of calm. And it's funny because when I showed this to some engineers, they said, "Oh, thank gosh, it's not like that other stuff I've seen out of ODU with all the bells and whistles." And it's like, "Oh, who were you looking at?" And they were looking at the English department, our department. They had seen us in a presentation. So all that to say, his visual design, his considered audience, reflected personality. It may not be my favorite approach, but the design is doing something there, right? Elle, would you mind dropping in Shania? And again, apologies to those of you who saw me last week. Sometimes I just grab the same bag of tricks, but I did show Shania last week because I think she is an interesting contrast to Shane when we think about design. And so I will give you a few moments. Same questions as above. Oh, thank you for putting the eye tracking in there, Debbie. Look at you wingmanning.
But much slower than you to find it and get it up.
This is also what happens when I work with our game studies folks too much. I love watching usability testing and all of that. For the sake of time, what are your first thoughts on her visual design and your takeaway from her narrative? Yes, I mean, Debbie, if you thought nothing else, if you were not a person talking about design, I hope the one thing you take away from Shania is she has a lot to tell you. This is a busy portfolio and the design reflects it. I, as an editor, would love to take her a little more towards the middle versus all the way towards Shane, right? In my mind, I often have them kind of on a spectrum. Shane and Shania in the middle, there's a happy medium where design is doing some work. But yes, notice she's using the institutional colors, right? She has made some thoughts about that. She's marking herself as from ODU. She has a lot. It's busy. Sometimes the image and text make your eye go everywhere, right? Where does she really want me to look? Um, but it's also kind of great because she's a thinker who goes all over the place. Her design reflects the woman with 25 mental tabs open. And I don't know if you all noticed, she works in our tick lab here. And I mentioned that last week, but it is so fun to look at her when she starts talking about ticks because you see her get excited, right? So the media is doing some good work for her, and sometimes the design is working against her a bit, right? So her layout can move the eye around a bit too much. I would talk to her about accessibility and screen readers, right? In contrast. But you can see an organizing principles in here. She's organizing by identity. Um, and she's got plenty of media. And so we can go both ways. But I just wanted to stress that because I feel like I go to all the conferences on portfolios and we so rarely talk about design. We talk a lot about personality, identity formation, and we talk about reflective questions. But I'm like, when have we really stopped to think about design for our students? And common design decisions that our students face that maybe we don't attend to that much, or at least overtly, are things like choosing readable colors. Last week I told the story, and I'm going to tell it again. But we had one where they had a repeating banana background with hot pink and then turquoise text on top of it. And when I close my eyes, that thing still haunts my nightmares. But the student thought it was fun, right? So then we had to talk about, again, audience accessibility and everything. And they were a fun person. And I don't want to take away a student's ability to express themselves. But also thinking about how do I organize content visually. When people talk about like the filing cabinet approach to portfolios, they often focus on making the reflective assignments more scaffolded, more detailed. But I think we sometimes forget that we can make activities where we're thinking more intentionally about the curation and organization of content on a page. Those are rhetorical identity performance moves as well. You just saw Shane give you too much blank space and Shania being like, you need to see everything right now, right? And so how do we kind of help them see how that's read through other readers' eyes? And then this balance between personality and professionalism. This is a tough one, I thought it was so interesting. I mean, I had a fight break out last time I showed Shane's because, again, some folks were pointing out that women are often penalized for showing their private lives in professional spaces. So they didn't love that he was foregrounding. He had that space. That's not a conversation for today or here. But it was interesting. This is how readers received this moment. They saw it as privilege rather than like a celebration. So different audiences receive you in different ways. And then again, thinking about accessibility and audience, which is increasingly important, and making sure all users can navigate your space. We had one where someone opened Shania's and went, absolutely not. It's overstimulating. And they went no further than like page 2, which I thought, what a shame. So having said all that, let's bring it back to AI, right? We saw Shane and Shania making choices. We can agree with their choices, we can disagree with their choices, but they are doing a very human act, which is expression through choice. But now we have various types of AI. Not all AI is generative, and not all AI is new. AI has been a part of ePortfolio practice for quite some time, in ways that are maybe less visible to students and our peers. And one of the easy ways we start to talk to students about AI and portfolio practices through tools like Adobe Color and other color palette generators. Elle, I can't remember, do I run this or do you want to? I want to make sure I don't run over you.
I wasn't sure. I feel like I might have done it last time.
Then I'll hand it to you. So I'm going to hand it over to Elle,
All right.
if you want it.
Yes. Did you want me to share my screen?
Sure, that's easier.
One. Oop, get everyone out of the way. I'll go ahead and send this since I already had it in the chat. But basically, we are going to play with Adobe Color. It It is a color palette generator. Basically, it's really helpful for students who, maybe they're not an art student. Maybe they don't know that much about putting colors together. I know we've all seen ePortfolios with colors that we think are a very interesting combination. We're not sure kind of how they've come up with that. But one of the really important things with an activity like this is that it's suggestions from AI. It shows possibilities to students, and then they're able to make choices, decide, which one, which colors they want to accept and that sort of thing. So we're going to do the activity. Stay with me. Um, it's in the chat, but you can also, oops, escape this. Um, if you opened our slideshow, you can also copy paste from that. So I'm going to paste it in. I already have one ready to go, but I want to show you the steps for it. So when you go to color.adobe.com, you can sign it if you want to. You don't have to do this activity. You can just click on Create a Color Palette Now. And then what you're going to do is actually, for this activity, we're going to do the image one. So you just switch it to image. You can choose any kind of image that you want. Generally, we encourage people to do maybe like their headshot image so that it is creating, a color palette around whatever your headshot is. So you just drag a picture here or click on this, upload your image and pick your image that you want to put in there. So did that earlier to be able to demonstrate. Um, and you can limit it to, 3 colors instead of 5 colors. This is the color mood is colorful for this one, but you can also do more of like a muted, if that's a little too much. A brighter one. You can do like dark colors if you're more into dark colors, but it still goes with your picture. But you can also say, I don't like this really dark one. You're able to, move any of these around to change the palette that it comes up with. Oh, that's really close. You don't do that. Um, but yeah, so this is just something that, students can use. They're able to take, copy it, download it. These are the hex codes that they would need to put into, something like Wix to be able to repeat these colors for their Wix color palette. But it's a nice way to kind of get them thinking about colors also and what colors they might want to put in their portfolio. And then you can also check the accessibility. They've changed it a little since the last time I used it. Let me see.
Up top next to create palette, you'll see the little icon to the right. There it is.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, it's looking very snazzy since the last time. I'm like, okay, it's looking cute. But you can see that it will let you know. So if the text is smaller, that that is not going to be a good enough color for the text. So if I make it a little bit lighter, then it passes all of those, and if I make it too dark, it's not going to pass all of the accessibility tests. Let's see, anything else?
Were folks able to upload a picture and play with their color palette? No, Debbie says no. What stopped you, Debbie? Thumbs up from Susan.
Formatting. My pictures are in a different format. It wants like a
no.
JPEG.
Oh
I always download one a red panda from online. I don't know why I always pick a red panda. But that's the way I go.
I'm not sure how to get past the color, like getting my picture there to the next step.
So, Elle, will you go back to where it's image? It's Candace, is that what you mean? You select image and you uploaded your picture,
Yep.
and then it didn't automatically generate anything?
Yep, my picture's there, but I
Did it?
don't quite know what to do next.
Oh, sure. Well, and at this point, you'll notice in the colors next to Elle's lovely portrait. First of all, before I get to that, I want to point out the fact that they use adjectives here: colorful, bright, muted, right? In the
Mhm.
past, they might even actually have, in past iterations, they would put moody, things like that were a little more trying to help nascent designers to understand what palette they were going towards. But if you see where it has the numbers at the bottom of each color, you can copy the hex code and then carry those over into your web builders and set your color palette. So I saw Debbie talking about Wix. In Wix, you can build a theme and use your hex codes, and thus you've created an entire color palette for the website in that way. And again, great opportunity for me to teach students about hex codes, which are a part of
Great.
design. Yeah, great question. Thank you, Candace.
Okay, I just missed the next step.
We're not doing anything beyond that. We just want you to play with generating colors. And if you're a colorful person or a bright person or a slightly
Okay,
muted
got it.
person, got it. All right, Elle, I'm sorry. Take it back to you.
no, you're good. Um,
Hmm.
ooh, yeah, looking good, Susan.
Ooh, Susan, why'd you settle on that? You can see the second half of the activity for my students would then be asking them, why this? And what does it convey, you think, to your viewer? So, Susan, why that? Great picture, great color palette.
Well, weirdly, those are the colors of my daughter's training club. So she's not actually she's wearing a Canada suit in the picture, but and with the Canada flag. So it's nothing to do with her club. It's just weird that it came up with the exact colors of her club, which I thought was funny.
Would you mind saying that? There's a comment in the chat. Would you mind saying that out loud for the recording?
Oh yeah, sure. I was just gonna say that. No, I love the being able to upload pictures, the fact that you can export the code. I mean, it's all very useful. And I just threw a little aside there that I happen to paint miniatures as a hobby. Picking a palette for what to paint can be very hard, and this thing just like is an immense just treasure for creativity.
Absolutely. And you really can play with this for a long time and change it to like a mono palette or a triad palette, etc. And it's interesting because you want watch students go through that same process. It's also funny what people gravitate towards. I'll tell you all, I actually have a little craft business. I vend at like farmers markets and stuff, and I have a particular brand color palette that I designed. Oh, is she looking at it? I'll look it up. And then I'm moving into a new home and I'm picking paint colors, and I picked the same ones without realizing that I just like those colors. So clearly they resonate with me, and they're also accessible. So you'd be able to find your way through my house. But yes, picking color is very hard. And if you are not a web designer, this is an incredibly difficult step, which a lot of times we see students go towards institutional colors because they're already vetted and it says something about where they belong. But if someone wants to be more creative, yes, purple's involved. Purple is very much involved in both those things. How did you guess? Um, the bedroom is deep emerald peacock colored, very jewel toned. So anyway, yes. So yeah, Adobe. This is a nice, gentle step towards speaking to students about AI. This is a moment where, again, going back to our earlier conversation, they slow down. Instead of just grabbing a theme, we have them build a theme from, some sort of centralizing image that might help them start to make those choices as good rhetoricians. All right, Elle, I know you're the next slide.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. I don't know why my mouse wasn't working for it. But so we talked a little bit about color and all of that, but you can also use AI to help a little bit with layout and content organization. And, some people don't instinctively kind of know how to organize their information. So you can actually turn to AI for those kind of design considerations. That's actually something that, AI is pretty good at, is organizing information and that kind of thing. So we have this, we're not going to take time to do the activity, but as an activity, you just enter into the AI, provide this type of menu site structure for this type of portfolio website, showcasing or highlighting this. And, the tone should be whatever you decide with clear organization and structure. So this is a, plug and play wherever the X's are. You decide what kind of portfolio you want and what you're going to ask of the AI to help you get you ideas about how to organize and have the layout of your website. So we have a couple of examples here of how you could, fill in those. So suggest a clean, accessible navigation menu and homepage layout for a student internship portfolio, showcasing projects, reflections, and a resume. The tone should feel professional but welcoming with clear organization for multiple audiences. So that is going to give a different answer in the AI than something like propose a simple, intuitive portfolio site structure for a first-year student, highlighting learning goals, coursework, and reflections with easy navigation and clear content hierarchy, and give it a modern, fresh tone with a clear structure. And then an important part to remember with any kind of activity like this is that this is just a starting off point. We're not telling students like ask AI and then follow exactly every single thing that AI tells you. But sometimes students definitely, especially if they're not using a really designed template, they're not sure where to start when it comes to organizing the content, creating the menu, kind of figuring out where everything should go. All right. Oh, exactly what I just said. I preempted it. But after generating that structure, students should be really thinking about what the results of that question to the AI are. Does it make sense for who they're thinking of as their audience? Anything they would change, rearrange, or remove entirely. Sometimes, you don't know exactly how you want something, but when you're presented with an option, sometimes you'll know immediately, oh, actually, now I know what I want, and what they said isn't exactly it. And then, perform a little usability test. Does it feel intuitive? Is there anything confusing or generic? Or, do you get stuck at any points as you're navigating through that menu? All right.
Yeah, I think this is me. And in the chat, Helen asked, as we said earlier, you have to have critical thinking and some design intuition, right? Before you can start to challenge what the AI is putting out. And one way we come at this, because again, we're writing studies, folks, can't be helped. We give them texts, right? We show them the good, bad, the ugly, the murky middles. And we really tease out, what did you like? What didn't you like? Why do you think that worked? Why don't you think that worked? And you find out, because we're so inundated in this digital culture, that they're savvier consumers of design than they realize. They can tell you something's not good, but when someone else is like, well, it's too busy. Oh, I don't like that header. Oh, that text on image didn't work for me. We start to put together kind of a style guide as a class and then go, guess what? Web designers agree. You are not wrong. You guys nailed it. Now you can go and have the AI generate if that's what you want. And again, I keep saying that because even though we're giving this presentation, I don't think we both have landed fully comfortably on whether or not we advocate for that use at that point. But that's the way we would schedule or kind of scaffold them into it. All right, sharing. I know we're going slow, so I'm going to speed us up just a moment here. And it's because you can tell we like this topic. We don't get to talk about it a lot. Now, I chatted with Pablo last week. I think the next couple of ABLs and computers and writing and NCTEs and 4Cs and all of that, we're going to move beyond, and I already think we are, the kind of AI conversations we're having now. But for portfolio work, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot more people talking about prompting, et cetera. We already did a little dance there. But we're seeing it in these like third-party platforms already in ways that are forcing our students' hands, are making it very difficult for them to get away from the AI's intervention. So, you know, Debbie was right. There was some comment in the chat. If you work with Wix at all, which is a big one, you know, free platform that a lot of schools are using, in January, they released Wix Harmony, which sounds like a dating site, but it's not. But it's just as fun. I'll tell you that. We don't love this interface right now. It keeps breaking, which is AI forward. And so by that, I mean new users, instead of seeing Classic Editor or Wix Studio, are automatically directed to this page where you can see the AI asking for a prompt. And now I've got one in here, and I'm going to hit generate my site, where I'm just asking it to build out a site framework. I'm going to move on from this while it's doing that because it's slow. You could probably build a website in the time that it will take to generate something. And our students have pretty universally hated what it generates on this end, which is quite interesting. They spend more time taking apart the AI's design because they're like, that's not who I am, which is one of the first comments I had a grad student say to me when it picked a palette that they didn't like and they didn't like the layout. And it's like, well, maybe it's not who you are because you didn't make it right from the start. Another one, and this is, I mean, I know all of you, like you were listing Google LM, Notebook LM is out there. There's others that people are playing with, like Claude made that wonderful one that Sonia had earlier. One that you see us using for the slide deck, because our school is AI forward focused is our theme right now. So our team is playing with different things. And here we see Gamma, which has a web page option. I've got that same prompt, and then I'm just going to drop it in. And so something I said earlier is that I think, and I'm just generating a site, I think what we're going to see for those of us, especially in writing studies and elsewhere, increased emphasis on pre-writing and brainstorming and analog. Oh, good. That was Harmony letting me know. As you can see off to the right, there's a bot that I can talk with. Great. Don't leave this. I am going to leave it because Gamma's faster than you. Anyway, I wanted you to see in real time, these tools are evolving and they're pushing our students towards AI bots and AI generation, and they're taking much of that design component that I just told you I think is so important a bit out of their hands. It doesn't mean they can't change it. It just means this is kind of pre-generated for them. Fascinating to watch it work, right? One reason we are interested in Gamma is that its accessibility focus, you know, it meets those standards. It makes sure that it's screen reader friendly, that the color contrast is right, so on and so forth. And again, you can change the color palette just like we would in Wix. You can change everything on here. And I am keeping an eye on the time. I know I'm talking faster, but I wanted to show those to you because both cases are examples of web builders taking away design choice, right? Or at least dominating that for our student. And so really, when we came here today, we wanted to think about, what do you think changes when the web builder takes on that initial design work? And I'd like to give you like a minute or two in the chat to write, what do you think's happening there for the user? Like, I'll stop there. I have answers. You can tell I want to rush towards it, but so what changes when the web builder is the initial designer? See some great both comments and questions like the more that students put portfolios into these systems, do the portfolios become more homogenized? And I would say probably, right? Um, Debbie, I see you made some comments about a theme I've noticed today, things we value that perhaps will be impacted, ownership, choices, and agency. But Rebecca pointed out, for some students, you don't have the blank page anxiety. It gets them started. In writing studies, we might call that parking downhill. You have a place to start, and you know your next step is now to edit, to go in and fill out and make changes. Yeah, these are great comments. Andrew, I love your point about taste. Very interesting, right? I've noticed there was a recent article online about the de-evolution of individual style and taste since the rise of social media, because again, everyone's looking at each other, emulating each other, and that's one reason we're harkening back to the 90s, the kind of pre-social media era, which may have been the last time youth culture really didn't have quite the same homogenization. Anyway, Elle and I have so many slides here. So I think, Elle, I'm going to let you start with the good. Maybe just keep it really tight. Like pick one or two of these.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you guys have like preempted some of the stuff that we have on these slides. I saw comments and I was like, yeah, that's what we think too. But basically, everything we have the good, the bad, and the ugly, starting with the good. But students can spend a little less time troubleshooting with the layout and are actually able to, spend more time on the content and the composition and the composing and actually deciding what are the important parts of their learning experience that they need to put in the portfolio. So while having the final say on the design and that kind of thing is an important part, maybe coming up with it from scratch isn't necessarily the most important part of the ePortfolio process.
That was good. High five. All right. The bad. You guys have pointed towards it, but I think some of it is that passivity in accepting. I think Andrew really articulated it quite well. Style and personal style is slower to develop in terms of online because you haven't practiced that. That goes back to those habits we were talking about earlier. And I see your question, Helen, and I work with a resilience scholar. So I don't know. I think learning sometimes needs to have some friction, right? And if you have to contend with a website not meeting your visual standard and style preference, that can be good, right? I mean, a lot of times higher ed talks about taking away obstacles, but I think we learn the most in the moments we kind of struggle. But having said that, these websites can be pretty ugly and the students still can intervene. So maybe I'm not right there. Maybe that struggle comes later. All right, one more for you, Elle.
Yeah. So these ones you guys definitely put in the chat. There can be a loss of personal voice, especially with less confident students who, they might have the instinct that they don't like something, but then they're like, well, the AI said I should do this, so I'm going to keep it like this. And then we have that kind of, everything starts to look, I saw in the chat, samey, everything starts to look the same. The AI is telling everyone to make all the websites look a certain way. And then if people listen to it too much, we'll get really boring, similar websites that, don't have any kind of personal flair to them.
And also, just because I am on the digital ethics task force, I want to point out that last one that we can't miss, that the bias in the AI will often move towards whitewashing, for instance, or dominant modes of representing things. So for instance, I had one generate a portfolio the other day about leadership, and the images it chose were all men. And so, I mean, obviously I would intervene with that, but what does that tell an less confident student who's trying to occupy a space maybe in a field where traditionally they're not as represented, that maybe larger discourses think that's not a space for them. All right. Whoopsie daisy. Elle, I think this was your slide, but it could be wrong. I don't.
So these are just some more activities. We love low stakes ePortfolio activities. But so these are very low pressure exercises, but where students actually document why they made each visual choice, the color, the layout, the font, regardless of whether, they consulted AI on it or not. But that kind of metacognitive awareness of why different visual choices would make a difference on their portfolio. And then you could also do constraint first prompting, where you're giving students the specific constraints to focus on before they prompt the AI. So, like that activity we showed earlier, where, you're explaining to the AI the type of audience you're going for, what tone you want it to be, you want the accessible design, all of that kind of thing. And then, comparing and reflecting. Students can review different layout options, even comparing between AI generated and, human student created designs, and, deciding which design they think works best for their purpose, and then, justifying that decision.
I'm loving this chat. And I thank you guys for being so engaged here at the end of the day. So the bigger picture, when we're talking about AI, ePortfolios, and in this case, design specifically, a colleague said, my students are using it anyway. And then I said, all right, well, then always have that intervening piece where they are doing rationales, explaining their choices, peer reviewing, giving back feedback, and thus the student does remain an agent within the system that they are being pushed towards, and a critical user of that system rather than mastered by the tools that they are within. I would love to update Slack. I don't know if you all can see that, but I don't have administrator access at this computer. So anyway, having said all that, we thank you for your time. We always love chatting with people. So if you'd like to contact us after this, we have a really formal and difficult to remember ePortfolio@odu.edu email. And of course, you can contact either Elle or I. And we did not do these gifts knowing the other one had timed it the same way. So we like to show that as our last little magic trick. So thank you, everybody. And we're open to questions now, of course.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elle and Megan, for showing us a slightly different side of portfolios, because of course typically we talk about the text and the portfolios in general, and it includes text, but where the digital portfolio shines is that multimodality, and that is also where then design comes in quite heavily, because students have more freedom. They don't just have the white page with black text that they have for the essay, but they can be creative. And some students are inherently creative and automatically pick a good color palette, whereas others struggle a bit. And therefore, having tools on hand that help, whether they are AI or not AI, is just a wonderful thing. And then also, what I really enjoyed listening in is how you help your students make decisions when they also want to use AI, when they might not really want to. And then also what had come out in the chat, or what had been mentioned by one person, where Debbie said that she doesn't grade the design, so that students don't have to be afraid of exploring things and playing with colors and so on, and have that space, safe space to feel.